Hi, I'm back again. As you can see, I've repositioned the camera, and this is the Type A as it's now refurbished. You can probably see that the deck is in excellent shape. And I took the liberty of making a base for it. The turntable might actually end up going back in to the, or at least this one will go into the Clairtone console. I'm not quite sure what I'll do when I get that one done. But meanwhile, I've made the base, and it's heavy, heavy. So it's quite secure. And I've done a number of things. I'll show you a few. First of all, on both turntables, I took this times 4 times 2 turntables. This is the spring mount that gives the deck a springiness. I guess that's the term. They're horrible. They're I don't know. I've never liked them. At any rate, I didn't feel that I wanted them on there. So now the deck has got 2 screws bolted down firmly to the deck. This doesn't seem to present any problem at all with acoustical feedback. I have ordered a speaker spike feet for this, and they're made out of brass or other metals, and they will go on the bottom of this. Now, that's not to mean that if you knock it or bang the surface that the needle would skip, but I think it gives a better perspective on controlling spurious feedback and other mechanical noises. I've done this on a few turntables, and it mostly works out well. Another thing I have done is, this is the, if I can show that, this is the tracking adjustment, or the stylus weight, if you like, and it goes in underneath here. It is the clunkiest thing. You balance the tone arm, and then you spring this, move this forward, and the spring pulls down on the tone arm more. It's difficult to adjust, and it's a pain, and it adds more weight or mass to the tone arm, and they're gone. Can't be bothered. Now, the other thing I've done is, if I can show this. How can I show this? There's the tone arm. Now, the original counterweight, as you can see, you can't really tell on that, but there is how big it is. It weighs probably over 1.5 pounds. It's massive. And it's not necessary for today's tracking forces or today's cartridges, which are a lot lighter. So, if I can lift this up, you can see right away that this is a lot smaller. So all I did was take it out to my shop and put it in the vise and hacksaw it down. Now, I took maybe a bit too much off, and it's right at the end of the travel to track what I want it to track at. Okay, another thing I have done is, if I can show that, I've taken, of course, the cartridge being removed, I've taken it to the grinder, and I've ground that off. Now, this is plastic, and it doesn't really represent a huge gain in removing excessive weight, but every little bit. And it exposes the edge of the cartridge, which is really what modern turntables tend to do. Another thing I've done is, I'll just start disassembling this. Now, Type A's have this peculiar situation where they have the turntable, And for most turntables, that's the optimum or the average size of the turntable. The idler is there and it drives the inner rim of the turntable. Now, when these were sold, they had a thin foam membrane that sat on that, and then this sat on top of that as well. So in virtually every Type A that I've come across, that membrane has turned into powder, literally, and it has to be vacuumed away. So that leaves you with nothing between this and this. I'm not sure what Garrard intended that membrane to do, but I thought, okay, I'll cut another membrane from some material that I can acquire. And then I saw, when I turned it over, that there are little divots there. I'm not sure whether you can see that underneath that. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8 precisely milled divots, part of the manufacturing process. And so I simply took these little feet dots and glued them in place. And I think they offer a pretty substantial isolation from the turntable there and this ring. So all I do is place that on there with these two. Now there's a curious thing. I just sort of noticed it now. They want those things to meet up, but yet I see no evidences of tooling that balances this outer ring. None. So unless I'm mistaken, where you place this ring has little to do with overall turntable balance. But there it is. So there's another thing. The mat, both of these mats are in pristine condition. Look, they're flexible, and there's no cracks, there's no hardness, there's no nothing. The other mat is exactly the same, and yet I've come across Type A's where they perish. They're solid. They've really gone, and they have to go, and I have to put a cork on top of there. But this actually fits in the differential slot between the ring and the turntable. So that's a nice surprise. So now the proof is in the pudding, and of course I'm going to put a record on, and I really can't do much in the way of showing. Before I do that, pardon me for changing course in midstream, I will run it through its cycle. And as you can see, it goes through the cycle with hardly any hesitation at all. And that's amazing for this idler wheel that was in the soup, so to speak, for a year. Now that I've got the different camera up, I can show you. There is the brake fluid, which is just some brake fluid I picked up from Canadian Tire. And I have the other idler sitting in there, and somehow I have a spare idler. So they're both going to sit in there. And if they sit in there for a year, I don't care. If that's what it takes to get these things supple, then it's well worth it. It's saving me, a lot of money in having to have them rebuilt. So that's a trick to try. Now you have to have, I'm not sticking my fingers in here and get them all yucky. The idler can have no flat spots, can have no pieces out of it, and can have no cracks. All three of these idlers are in good physical condition. They're just a little hard from age. So if you have any idlers that you need to try this treatment on, please make sure there's no flat spots and there's no pieces out of it and no cracks. If there is, it's an exercise in futility. You're not going to get anything that's going to be usable. So if you have idlers like this, for Pete's sakes, try it, and forget the 2-week thing. Let them sit in there for a few months. Now you're going to really have to clean it, because this stuff is oil of some sort, and it takes a lot. So I use a lot of paper towels and a lot of isopropyl alcohol to get it all cleaned up. And there it is. Okay, so I have a record, and I am going to put it through its paces. And this is, while it's doing that, I'll mention what I've managed to get it to track at. Now I'll put the volume up for just a second or two, and you can hear that it plays quite well. Okay, and that happens to be Jerry Murod's Harmonicats, and I've adored them since I was a kid. They're a product of the late 40s, 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, and they certainly can turn quite a few songs into something special. At any rate, I shall turn that off. Now, as far as the tracking, my optimum tracking for most cartridges would be about 2 grams. That's not likely going to happen with this, and in fact, I proved that it wasn't. So what I have done is I set it for what I thought it would track at, and I put it at 4.5 grams, I think. And I tried it out, and lo and behold, it tracked perfectly. The stylus did not wiggle as the record moved. The stylus stayed stable, and the tone arm moved, which is what it's supposed to do. When it came to the end and the lead-out grooves, it tracked, and the trip mechanism happened, and everything was fine. So now I needed to find the low end of what it would work. So I did go to 2 grams tracking, and it didn't work. The stylus was going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, which is, you can imagine, it's hard on the walls of the record, and it's hard on the resilient support for the stylus, pardon me. And so that's not good. So I ended up with just a wee bit, maybe 3.1 or 3.15 tracking grams, which I find that acceptable. And I will play probably a lot of my records. Certainly my records that I acquired in the 60s were played on very much worse record players, like RCA portable record players that tracked at about 10 or 12 grams, and BSR UA8, which was my first changer that had a ceramic cartridge and probably tracked at about the same. So it wasn't until about 1970 that I started paying attention and buying better turntables that tracked much better. So all the records from the 60s, if they're damaged for whatever reason by being played on that inferior type of equipment, the damage is done. So I'm more than willing to play them on this. Now, whether I sell it or whether I keep it, I have restored these before and I've sold them. But I'm kind of fond of this device here, which is called the pusher platform. And I have been told that it is the gentlest way to drop the records during change cycle. Now, I'm not sure whether that's true, but it does just push a little bit on the edge of the record, and there's a slot in this, okay, that's the thickness relatively of one record. And when the stack is there, and then one record is there, one record and one record only can be pushed over in order to slide down the rest of the shaft onto the player. The actual mechanism, as it places the cartridge or the tone arm over the record, is relatively gentle, surprisingly, when it lowers the cartridge down, relatively. There's obviously newer machines that do a better job. So it's not liable to damage the stylus or not liable to damage the grooves. There's no anti-skating on this, and I wouldn't even begin to attempt to fasten one on there of some degree, and there's no cueing device. There's something to remember if you do acquire one of these things. When it's in the automatic mode, the tone arm is not completely released from the mechanism. And if you pick it up from wherever part of the record with this, and you try to move it back, it'll encounter a spring movement, and it'll rip it out of your hands and go skating right across the record, which will damage the record and is liable to damage the stylus. So you do not really touch it. You can go forward, but you can't go back. So again, you can do that, but don't pick it up and try and bring it back. You'll be sorry. If you want to play it manually, and there is no true manual function on this, but you let it go through the cycle, and you let it shut off, and there, when it has no record on the stack, this goes that one notch farther, and then it tells it to shut off. So if you're in this position, you turn on the manual, and then you can pick up, and the tone arm will move freely from there to there and back again. So you can do whatever you want to pick for a track to listen to, and you'll be good to go. Let's see if I can give you a little bit more. Okay, again, that's all I can do. So that's it. The dirty work's all been done, and unfortunately I didn't and couldn't share it. It's just a lot of cleaning on this. So to shut it off, you can go over there and it will pick up and go over, measure that there's no record, and then it shuts off. So like I said, it would be nice if I could share this with somebody who's really interested in this age of a turntable. It would perform quite well for anybody. But every time I get one of these things, I end up selling them, and then I regret. So if it's going to sit on the shelf, then I'll just simply bring it down from time to time and play some records and enjoy the way the mechanism works. It's the last of the old style Garrard turntable, and I have found out online that what Garrard apparently did was, with all their leftover parts from the RC88 and RC98 changers and their 4HF, I think that was, turntable, of which the tone arm is apparently from, they told their engineers, make something to use up all our extra spare parts. And this is what they come up with. And it's really a dog's breakfast underneath. It is the most complicated mechanism I've come up with, come up against. And when they finally depleted that and they moved on and had a new design, well, the new design was the Auto Slim, the AT6, the 2000, the 2500, the 3000 turntables, all used a single gear and an eccentric slot that actually did all the movement of the tone arm and everything else in there. Much easier to work on when it needs servicing, and much more reliable, and much less difficult to drive through the change cycle. And I've had a few of them, and I've enjoyed them. In fact, I have a 3000 in an RCA table model unit that's sitting around the corner from me. So I guess that's it. So turntable is hard mounted to this base, and it is heavy. It's lots of layers of plywood there with the cutout for the deck to fit in. Holes in the bottom for the wiring, because the thickness of all the plywood pieces really didn't allow me to drill holes in the back. But that'll be no problem once I get the spike feet on it. Now, the one thing you can't do with my arrangement here is to level it. So you would have to make sure that the surface you have it sitting on, will be relatively level. And I guess that's it. I can't think of anything else I covered. So this goes off to sit somewhere and wait for the feet to arrive in the mail or the delivery service. And hopefully in the next week or so, I'll be able to get started on the next project, which I promised way back almost a year ago would be the Zenith Transoceanic radio, which I acquired a year ago last summer. And it's just been sitting there waiting for me to do a video on. And I will start on that one next. So again, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, even though I didn't get into the actual mechanism repair, cleaning, and lubricating on camera. I'll try and do better in the future. I know it takes a lot more time, and sometimes I just get a little antsy and want it all done so I can move on to the next one. I've got a lot of stuff to do. The Claretones, GE, old radios. I can't even think of what else is sitting there. So at any rate, once again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and everybody have a good rest of the day.